that they have contributed towards the goal. So in this case, the project creator asked for $5,000, and so far $4,000 have been contributed. So he needs to raise $1,000, the difference, $1,000, in 4 days. So there's 4 days left for the project. And this is what anybody sees who comes to the page, so they understand that you haven't reached that point yet. And if they contribute, they'll get you a little bit closer. Our model is called all or nothing. I'm going to go back for a second. When the 4 days are over, if the project has not reached 5,000, nothing happens. No money changes hands. It just stops, it finishes, and it's done, and it's unsuccessful. If the project crosses 5,000, if it reaches 5,000 or more by the last day, that's when the financial transaction happens. So if it finishes at 4,000, no money actually changes hands. The creator will not receive 4,000. The creator receives nothing. The creator only receives money if it crosses the goal, which in this case is 5,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably the most important part of the website. So why do we do this? That was very dramatic, thank you. We do this because it works. We know that it creates a sense of excitement. It's also more honest, because if you need a certain amount of money to achieve something, to go into production on something, or to buy the right materials, then if you had less, how would you do it? And it's less risky because of that. There's less risk involved. Backers feel more confident that you have enough people supporting you to make this happen. And it's also compelling, which means that if I'm contributing towards your project, and I'm one of 100 people that helped reach your goal, I feel like I made a big difference. And that's important, because it's the difference between a consumer and a customer and somebody who's part of your project. If I'm one of the first 100 people that helped Oculus make VR, that's a huge amount of pride, because it's knowing that there's a sense of gratitude there. There's something that says, I didn't just give money, I believed in them before anybody else believed in them. And I helped bring this vision together. Of all the projects that we've had on the site, 40% reached their goal, which is actually a very high percentage. It's almost half. Almost half of the projects on the site reach their goal. And there's also something else. 79% of all the projects that raise more than 20% fund. What that means is that if you say that your goal is $10,000, and in the first few days you reach $2,000, you have an 80% chance of succeeding. We call it a tipping point. It's like a cliff, and once you get over that, once you get to the top, then things become a little bit easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. And another way of looking at it is that 75% of all the projects that have at least 25 backers succeed. Now, I love this one, because it means that somewhere in the 25%, we have projects that have 0 backers. We have projects whose mom and dad did not back it, which means that they did a bad job of telling people about the project. What this is saying is, if you launch a project on our website, or if you do anything on the internet, tell everybody. Tell people on WeChat, or tell people, just communicate about it online. When people set their goals, we're able to see all the projects and understand where these goals are. And this is actually a very important lesson, in that most of the projects, the majority, raise between $1,000 and $10,000, which is, it's not a very large amount of money, and it's not the projects that get a lot of attention, but it's most of the projects on our site. And it's a good reminder that sometimes you just need a little bit of yeast to get things moving. Just to find enough momentum and enough people to help you get to the next step. Is anybody familiar with a card game called Cards Against Humanity? It's a game. It's just a card game. It's like sort of.
You can explain.
Kind of. It's a game. It raised $10,000 on our website. 4 years later, it's one of the biggest games in the world in the U.S. Their Kickstarter project was just the very, very beginning of what would become very successful for them. So when you look at our site and if you're only looking at $1 million projects or $500,000 projects, you're doing it wrong. You should also be looking at the very small projects and understanding, how did this one succeed? Why did they do this? What motivated them? What kind of pictures did they take that were interesting, that made people emotional? You can always email my team at technology@kickstarter.com. Okay. I will let them know that everybody's going to email.
You are in charge of this project.
I'm in charge is a big word. I have a wonderful team that I work with. And we all look at this email address every now and then. In the design and technology category, we've had about 7,500 successful projects. Actually, it's about $500 million at this point, because these numbers are a little bit old. And if anybody has ever been to CES, in one particular area of CES, 1/4 of all the projects at some point have been on Kickstarter. And it's the area that's probably the most interesting area of CES, actually. It's where all like the smaller companies are. At Maker Faire in New York, 1 out of every 10 projects at Maker Faire has done a Kickstarter campaign at some point. A lot of the 3D printers, a lot of the CNC milling machines. We're definitely like a big part of how the maker world professionalizes, how makers start companies. And again, you don't have to start a company, but even sometimes if you want better materials and you need to buy a lot of it, even to get one piece, sometimes a Kickstarter campaign can be very useful just for that too. In the tech and design categories, the average amount raised is $84,000. And we've had, at this point, over 1,000 projects raise more than $100,000. $100,000 is generally the mark in the technology category for a very complex project that involves a lot of tooling. Everybody here has a huge advantage in that you can visit factories and production facilities and understand what something costs, how long it will take, and what materials it's going to need better than anybody can do it in the US, specifically for electronics and hardware. It's a huge advantage, and I'm fascinated by what people can do when they have that kind of ability. Some interesting projects. Print was a project that was originally out of France. It's a case for your phone where you take the picture and then it prints it out in the back. They were actually a part of Accelerator, which is a tech incubator here in Shenzhen. And what a lot of teams do to have that advantage that you guys have, even for a little bit, the entire team just moves here and they go through like a 16 or 18-week process in which they just do product development, and then they finish and they go back, and then other companies come in. This is just to give you a sense of what it's like for other teams to come here and do their work. This is the Neo Lucida, in which two art professors in the US wanted to recreate a traditional object that's used for drawing. So you put your eye over here, you look through, and it splits what you see, and the top is in front of you, and the bottom of what you see is below. So you can draw like this. what you're seeing. It's a prism. So they started this project and they said, we want to make 500 of these. And we're going to run a 30-day Kickstarter campaign. And they had all of their manufacturing in the US. They knew exactly what they were going to do. But the only problem was that 2 days into the campaign, it was sold out, and they had 28 days left, and a lot of people that still wanted these. So they couldn't make that in the US anymore. But they also didn't know how to make it anywhere else. They didn't have the right kind of experience and expertise. But there's something very interesting that happens on our site in that all the other people that have done campaigns, they like talking to each other, just the same way that everybody here likes to be here and talking to each other. It's a community. So a couple of people decided that they would help Pablo and Golan, the professors, with their project and connected them with manufacturing. I'm not sure where in China, but definitely China. Probably, I'm going to guess it was Hong Kong. And they actually got it done here. So a big part of what happens on Kickstarter a lot is you do something, you kind of know how to do it, and then if during the campaign you realize that you need to understand more about how to do the next thing, you can start asking within the community, and the right people will start to give you options. You don't have to believe everybody, but you have to have enough conversations to understand who might have the right information. And they ended up with making a few thousand of these. And it's amazing because they didn't want to start a company. And they didn't start a company. What they did was they told Big Idea Design, that small company that helped them manufacture, they said, why don't you do this from now on? You make the money. You just give us a little bit of a licensing fee. So, because they're just professors, they just teach. So, and they wanted to keep doing that. But they had this thing, so they allowed the other company to keep making it.